fairly with that. The ACLU, meanwhile, sued a meatpacking plant over measures to protect workers from the coronavirus, which is another thing to watch, this kind of worker right violation that we have seen time and time again. So, finally, just to kind of get a look at this vaccine. So, we have 6 vaccines approved for early or limited use at this point, and those are some of the best ideas that we know in terms of the vaccines that are kind of in limited approval for early use. 13 are large-scale efficacy tests, and that's kind of the stage before they're publicly announced, and that is the moment that we are at. But we don't really know right now about, in terms of a timeline, in terms of when you're going to start hearing about people getting vaccinated. And that is going to be definitely something to watch in the future. All right, we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about Donald Trump's legacy when it comes to foreign policy and how that has been very oftentimes misinterpreted. So we'll get to that next. You are listening to Newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, episode 452. We're talking a little bit about Donald Trump today, and as he heads out of the White House, what is his legacy on issues of war and peace? Hindsight, at least in the context of American politics, is kind of a fickle thing. It basically is now widely accepted the Iraq War was a terrible idea. And Donald Trump in 2016 harnessed 15 years of American pain and claimed he would end it, castigating George W. Bush in particular, saying the 2003 invasion of Iraq may have been his worst decision in history, and kind of a very, very memorable moment there. And really, something interesting, I think, that kind of set it up was just the really got this perception, this kind of populist perception that we would see from Donald Trump that was kind of a pro, or the myth of kind of the Donald the Dove just turned out to be absolutely completely untrue. And that is something that a lot of people just have not been able to kind of come across. So in terms of what we've seen, in terms of the actual realities of the situation, there just has not been there just has not been a broader change in foreign policy. We know that very, very clearly. Adam Serwer, writing about this in The Atlantic, was very, very, it's like we've seen time and time again, like the first thing Trump did as a foreign policy figure, his first major foreign policy move was to go in Saudi Arabia, right, and be like, we just give them a bunch of weapons, folks. We give them a bunch of weapons. They love us. They love our weapons with our great American companies. Like, this is really what he's trying to do. He's trying to America-firstitize and kind of Trumpify the national security state. Really, most libertarians and just left and right libertarians were kind of horrified by the election of Donald Trump. There was a lot of thinking among some that the compromise with the Trump administration on a few of his more illiberal policies was a small price to pay to ensure a more peaceful foreign policy. And there has been some kind of contradictions. There has been efforts that we've seen from Trump to pull troops back, but it's always really kind of fallen short when the generals get in there, because it's really unlike anything that we've ever seen with another president. Actually, I'm sure it isn't, but it's never really been this clear where we say, where we see a president say, yeah, I want to get troops out. I'm trying to get troops out, but then nothing ever happens because the generals kind of just step in and be like, oh, no. You don't want to do that, Mr. Trump. But like, it's not a bad idea. Why don't you go take a few rounds on shoot a few holes, like come back and after you played around, like, and think about it then. He's okay, and then just forgets about it, and they continue the blob, unadulterated as they always have. They seem to believe that current favor of the 45th president, the administration will be less amenable to a neoconservative foreign policy agenda. But one need be a neoconservative to be a hawkish, and Donald Trump is most certainly a hawk. Despite Trump's hawkishness, Senator Rand Paul apparently believes that by approving Trump's nominees, he will wield influence over the president's foreign policy, something that he tried to do slightly early on, and that really he kind of has been a long time friend of the defense industry. So here's a clip from Al Jazeera about it. In the wake, this is actually from the, like, this is before his first election. This is September 17th, 2016.
It's become fashionable in some quarters to suggest Hillary Clinton is more dangerous than Donald Trump, more of a warmonger, while her Republican opponent is an isolationist, a non-interventionist. Hillary is a hawk and Donald is a dove. It's complete nonsense. Don't take my word for it, just listen to the Donald himself.
I'm more militaristic than anybody in this room.
I'm going to bomb the out of them. Waterboarding would be fine. When you get these terrorists...
Like, that was really a lot of his entire kind of political strategy there. It was a very kind of weird mix of talking out of both sides of his mouth. We've seen him trying to do that in multiple respects, with talking, especially in criminal justice reform. That was a big issue where he was kind of like or double-sided on in a very, very weird way. Well, a lot of it was like, oh, I want to get the troops out. Like, we're spending a bunch of this nonsense on these foreign wars. He would say that all the time during the campaign. But look at what we had, almost starting a war with Iran, by killing Soleimani. All the comments about expanding the drone war, lowering the rules of engagement, more civilian casualties, more bombs dropped, everything like that. It was just kind of considered unadulterated. But interestingly enough, the national security people weren't really happy with him. They came out in droves for Biden. But that was really just because of the fact that, I mean, Biden would kind of allow them to continue relatively unabated. But really what the difference was, I think, really that once you come down to the way that they treated, like, Biden treated the national security state with a little bit more respect. He wouldn't get bored, which is something. The best part of Trump's presidency is how I think probably one of the best is with how little respect he treated the national security state, while still just owing to the fact that he's a personal demon and just someone who loves kind of carnage and destruction if he thinks it'll benefit him. He continued unabated and oftentimes enhanced the U.S. mechanisms of war while in office. But here's the thing, and here's the difference. This is why all the national security state people hated him, where they will love and overwhelmingly support someone who just wants to be literally wanted to be a CIA agent. He was like, looked at this, oh, that's so cool to see what the CIA does. That's just awesome, man. I love that stuff. Joe Biden loves the CIA. Donald Trump couldn't care less. He thinks all those intelligence people are like, they're untrustworthy, and he's right. He is overwhelmingly right. Like, he seems to have much more affinity for like the big handsome generals who are out there and they're all their stars and stripes than those shifty, shady intelligence guys who he gets bored while getting the briefings. And that's probably something that if you think about it, is going to be for the better in terms of not just for Americans, but for a lot of people outside of America, in terms of him just absolutely being uninterested in whatever awful things they were trying to get him to do. And his lack of interest, his lack of respect in what they were trying to tell him demoralized him so much that they were just actually, like, the wheels did grind a little bit. But in certain other areas, and a lot of other areas, the important thing to remember is a lot of stuff continued in a very detrimental way to a lot of people. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on here. So yeah, we are going to go move on. I'm sure we'll be talking a little bit about that story in the future, the hawkishness and the dovishness of Trump and Joe Biden. But I mean, Trump has definitely has a complicated legacy on that. But I mean, we do very well know what is going on, and we know what Trump did in and it's very, very clear that the heaviness of his war record outweighs whatever kind of disrespect he may have thrown to the CIA or kind of times where he may have pissed some people off in the national security state. Like, things really did not change. Things just got a little bit more run down, a little bit more pathetic when it comes to the front. And it's going to be interesting to see how that'll change under Joe Biden and his someone who's going to be really leading a lot of the blob, the national security state, Tony Blinken. On Sunday, word got out that Joe Biden planned to nominate Tony Blinken, his longtime former foreign policy consigliere, to be the next Secretary of State. Out came the profiles. New York Times called Blinken, seemingly with approval, a defender of global alliances. Again, that is something that was a huge, huge difference between the Trump and the Biden foreign policy. He actually cared about maintaining the U.S. position on the global stage. That's another big thing that freaked out these national security people. All this web of United States hegemony, this control over everything the world over, ability to pull all the world's strings, and often not do it for the interest of the American people, but to the detriment of the people on the ground, and really for American corporations. That's really what those alliances served to break. And Trump wasn't trying to break them because of any goodwill towards the people or desire to bring change. He just didn't care. He was just an incompetent manager of global empire, more and more incompetent than the people before him. But Washington Post said about Blinken that he was one of a suite of Biden's foreign policy and national security picks with decades-long careers working at the highest levels of government, a deep respect for institutions. How wonderful. There were some items about the rock band he fronts and an old video of him and Grover, yes, the Sesame Street legend, talking about refugees, which made the rounds, much to the delight of everybody. Into the scene came into this happy scene of just a joy in Grover and Sesame Street. Everyone's just so happy. Like, Tony Blinken, let's go, woohoo! Defender of global alliances, cares about maintaining U.S. hegemony on the global stage. Just a standard member of the blob state back in power. Let's go, baby. So cool. But here's the thing. Traitor American Prospect editor David Dayen, who recently had the audacity to link a story from his outlet about what Blinken's been up to recently. And that really got people pissed off. Here's what the facts of the story from Prospect's Jonathan Geyer. Prospect, by the way, great article, great outlet that we have used many times and will use many times on the show throughout the Biden administration. So here's what he's been up to. Blinken launched West Exec Advisors with the fellow Obama national security chiefs in 2018. West Exec's very name is a reference to the avenue that runs along the White House, suggested that its founders were trading off their recent experience in the Oval Office and were angling for positions in the next administration. Blinken became a partner at a private equity firm named Pine Island 2. It was quite a change for someone who had spent most of their career in government and recently served as Vice President Biden's National Security Advisor from 2019 to 2013, as Deputy Secretary of State from 2015 to 2017. He and Michelle Flournoy, a former senior defense official, registered in the firm in Delaware, of course, the home state of Joe Biden and the best place to register any kind of company anywhere, kind of the tax haven of the United States if there ever was one. They had a party to open their downtown D.C. suite with the honchos from the Obama administration. Just kind of, you get the sense here, if you're getting kind of sensing some sort of a revolving door, the swamp, the deep state, the cesspool. If these are some of the words creeping in your mind here, your mind is probably in the right place. Who's this firm advising? West exec staffers cited non-disclosure agreements and declined to name the clients, but in the conversations with members of the firm, I learned that Blinken and Flournoy used their networks to build up a large client database at the intersection of tech and defense. An Israeli surveillance startup turned to them. So did a major U.S. defense company. Google billionaire Eric Schmidt and Fortune 100 companies